why they ignore you. The frustration is familiar. You have something important to say, yet your words seem to bounce off invisible walls. Your colleagues tune out during meetings, your family members change the subject, and friends offer polite nods before redirecting conversations elsewhere. The uncomfortable truth is that being heard requires more than simply having something worth saying. One of the primary reasons people resist listening lies in how we present our ideas. When we're passionate about a topic, we often mistake volume for clarity and repetition for persuasion. We launch into lengthy explanations, pile on evidence, and wonder why eyes begin to glaze over. The human attention span is finite, and overwhelming your audience with information often achieves the opposite of your intended goal. People don't resist your message because they're stubborn. They resist because you've made listening feel like work rather than discovery. Timing plays an equally crucial role in receptivity. You might have the perfect solution to your boss's problem, but if you corner them during a stressful deadline, your brilliance falls on overwhelmed ears. Similarly, attempting to discuss relationship issues when your partner is exhausted or distracted ensures your concerns will be minimized or forgotten. The best message delivered at the wrong moment becomes background noise. Perhaps more challenging to recognize is how our own credibility affects others' willingness to listen. If you've previously been wrong about important matters, interrupted others frequently, or dominated conversations without acknowledging different perspectives, you've likely depleted your listening bank account. Trust is the currency of communication, and past interactions create the context for present conversations. People make split-second decisions about whether to invest their attention based on their accumulated experience with you. The way we frame our communications also determines their reception. Leading with criticism, jumping immediately to solutions without acknowledging the problem, or speaking as though your perspective is the only valid one creates natural resistance. When people feel judged or dismissed, they instinctively protect themselves by disengaging. Ironically, the more desperately we want to be heard, the more likely we are to communicate in ways that ensure we won't be. Consider also the emotional climate you create when speaking. Are you bringing anxiety, frustration, or impatience to the conversation? Emotions are contagious, and if your energy feels heavy or demanding, others will unconsciously seek to escape it. People are drawn toward those who make them feel comfortable and valued, not those who make them feel inadequate or pressured. Sometimes the issue isn't how you're speaking, but whether your audience has the capacity to truly listen at that moment. Everyone carries mental and emotional loads that affect their ability to process new information. Your teenager might be wrestling with social anxiety, your spouse might be preoccupied with work pressures, or your friend might be dealing with family drama. Their inability to engage isn't personal rejection, it's human limitation. The path forward requires honest self-reflection combined with strategic communication adjustments. Start by examining your own listening habits. Do you genuinely hear others, or are you simply waiting for your turn to speak? People can sense whether you're truly interested in dialogue or just seeking an audience for your monologue. Focus on creating connection before seeking to be understood. Ask questions, acknowledge others' perspectives, and demonstrate that their thoughts and feelings matter to you. When people feel seen and valued, they naturally become more receptive to what you have to share. Choose your moments carefully. Brief, well-timed conversations often accomplish more than lengthy, poorly timed presentations. Respect others' capacity and energy levels, and be willing to table important discussions until conditions are more favorable. Most importantly, remember that being heard is ultimately about serving your audience, not satisfying your own need to express yourself. When you shift from, "I need to tell you this," to, "How can I share this in a way that benefits you?" your entire approach transforms. People don't resist listening to those who clearly have their best interests at heart. The goal isn't to manipulate others into hearing you, but to become the kind of person others naturally want to listen to. This requires patience, empathy, and the wisdom to recognize that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is remain silent and truly hear what others are trying to tell you first. Retry but in becoming the kind of person that others naturally want to listen to. How to become that? Edit becoming someone others naturally want to listen to. The transformation into someone others seek out for conversation isn't about perfecting speaking techniques. It's about fundamentally changing how you show up in relationships. This shift requires developing specific qualities and habits that make people feel genuinely valued and understood. Cultivate genuine curiosity. People can immediately sense whether your interest in them is authentic or performative. True curiosity means asking follow-up questions not because you're supposed to, but because you genuinely want to understand their experience. When someone mentions they had a difficult day, instead of immediately offering advice or sharing your own struggles, dig deeper. What made it particularly challenging? Or how are you handling that? This demonstrates that their inner world matters to you more than your need to contribute to the conversation. Master the art of presence. In our distracted age, giving someone your complete attention has become a rare gift. Put away your phone, make eye contact, and resist the urge to mentally rehearse your response while they're speaking. Notice their body language, tone changes, and what they're not saying. When people feel truly seen, they naturally want to spend more time with you. This kind of presence signals that you find them worth your full attention, a powerful message in a world where most people feel overlooked. Develop emotional intelligence. Learn to read the emotional temperature of any conversation. Sometimes people need solutions, but often they just need acknowledgement. Practice identifying whether someone wants advice, validation, or simply to be heard. A simple, "that sounds really frustrating," can be more valuable than 10 suggestions for improvement. When you consistently respond to what people actually need rather than what you think they should need, they begin to trust you with deeper, more meaningful conversations. Become comfortable with silence. Resist the urge to fill every pause with words. Silence gives people space to think, feel, and share more deeply. Some of the most profound conversations happen in the spaces between words. When you're comfortable with quiet moments, others feel permission to process their thoughts without pressure to keep the conversation moving. Share vulnerability strategically. People connect with humanity, not perfection. Share your struggles, uncertainties, and mistakes, but do so in service of connection, not as a way to redirect attention to yourself. The key is proportion and timing. If someone is sharing their anxiety about a job interview, briefly mentioning your own career fears can create solidarity, but launching into a detailed account of your employment history shifts the focus away from them. Practice intellectual humility. Approach conversations with the assumption that you might learn something new or have your perspective changed. Even when you strongly disagree with someone, seek first to understand their reasoning before attempting to persuade them. Questions like, "Help me understand how you came to that conclusion," or "What experiences led you to that belief?" demonstrate respect for their thought process, even when you don't share their conclusions. Remember details that matter. Pay attention to the small things people mention: their dog's name, their upcoming presentation, their parents' health concerns. Following up on these details weeks later shows that your conversations with them are significant enough to remember. This isn't about keeping mental scorecards. It's about treating people's lives as worthy of your ongoing attention and care. Offer support without strings. When you offer help, advice, or resources, do so without expecting gratitude, reciprocation, or adoption of your suggestions. The moment people sense that your support comes with hidden expectations, they begin to guard themselves around you. True generosity in conversation means sharing your thoughts and resources freely, then letting go of the outcome. Create psychological safety. People naturally gravitate toward those who make them feel safe to be imperfect. Avoid immediately correcting minor factual errors, judging unconventional choices, or responding to admissions of weakness with lectures about what they should do differently. When people know they won't be criticized or fixed by you, they're far more likely to share authentically. Develop your own interesting inner life. Paradoxically, becoming more interesting to others often requires becoming more interested in your own growth and experiences. Read widely, try new things, develop opinions based on reflection rather than reaction, and cultivate genuine passions. People are drawn to those who bring depth and richness to conversations, but this depth must come from authentic engagement with life, not from rehearsed anecdotes or borrowed insights. Practice graceful disagreement. Learn to disagree without being disagreeable. When you must challenge someone's ideas, do so while affirming their right to hold those ideas and your respect for them as a person. Phrases like, "I see it differently, but I understand why you might think that," maintain relationship while expressing divergent views. People will seek out your perspective when they know you can disagree with their ideas without attacking their character. The ultimate secret to becoming someone others want to listen to is this: focus less on being interesting and more on being interested. When people consistently feel better about themselves after talking with you, they'll naturally seek more opportunities for conversation. This isn't manipulation. It's the natural result of treating others with the kind of attention and respect that makes them feel truly valued. This transformation takes time and consistent practice. You'll occasionally fall back into old patterns of waiting for your turn to speak or trying to impress rather than connect. The key is gentle self-correction and remembering that every conversation is an opportunity to practice showing up as your best self for another human being. In a world saturated with information, opinions, and voices clamoring for attention, it's not uncommon to feel like your words fall on deaf ears. Whether in personal conversations, professional settings, or public forums, the experience of not being heard can be frustrating and disheartening. But why does this happen? Why do people sometimes seem unwilling or unable to listen to what you have to say? The reasons are multifaceted, rooted in psychology, communication dynamics, and societal influences. This essay explores several key factors that contribute to why others may not want to listen to you and offers insights into how to navigate this challenge. Lack of trust or credibility. One of the primary reasons people may not listen to you is a lack of trust or perceived credibility. Trust is the foundation of effective communication. If your audience, whether it's a colleague, friend, or stranger, doesn't trust your intentions or believe in your expertise, they're less likely to value your words. This can stem from past experiences, such as inconsistent behavior, broken promises, or a lack of demonstrated knowledge on the topic at hand. For instance, if you're offering advice in a professional setting but haven't established a track record of success in that area, others may dismiss your input. Building credibility through consistent actions, transparency, and expertise can help overcome this barrier. Poor communication style. Even if you have valuable insights, the way you communicate can make or break whether others listen. A communication style that is overly aggressive, condescending, or unclear can alienate your audience. For example, speaking in a way that feels like a lecture rather than a conversation can cause people to tune out. Similarly, failing to tailor your message to your audience's interests or level of understanding can make it difficult for them to engage. Active listening, empathy, and clarity are critical to fostering a dialogue where others feel compelled to listen. Asking questions, acknowledging others' perspectives, and using relatable language can make your message more inviting. Emotional or psychological barriers. People's willingness to listen is often influenced by their emotional or psychological state. If someone is distracted, stressed, or emotionally overwhelmed, they may not have the mental bandwidth to process what you're saying, no matter how valid your points are. Additionally, cognitive biases like confirmation bias, where people favor information that aligns with their existing beliefs, can lead them to dismiss your perspective if it challenges their worldview. For example, if you're discussing a controversial topic, someone with deeply entrenched views may instinctively reject your input to avoid cognitive dissonance. Recognizing these emotional barriers and approaching conversations with patience and sensitivity can help create a space where listening becomes possible. Information overload and attention scarcity. In today's fast-paced, information-rich environment, attention is a scarce resource. People are bombarded with messages from social media, news, and their immediate surroundings, making it harder for any single voice to stand out. This phenomenon, often called information overload, means that people are more selective about what they choose to focus on. If your message doesn't immediately capture their interest or seem relevant, it's likely to be ignored. To counter this, framing your message in a way that resonates with your audience's priorities or using storytelling techniques to make it memorable can increase the chances of being heard. Lack of connection or relevance. People are more likely to listen when they feel a personal connection to the speaker or see the relevance of the message to their lives. If you're speaking to someone who doesn't feel invested in the topic or doesn't perceive you as relatable, they may tune out. For instance, a manager giving directives without acknowledging their team's challenges may struggle to gain their attention. Building rapport, showing genuine interest in others, and framing your message in a way that aligns with their values or needs can make them more receptive. Social and cultural dynamics. Social and cultural factors also play a significant role in whether people listen. In some contexts, hierarchies or power dynamics can silence certain voices. For example, in a workplace where senior leaders dominate discussions, junior employees may feel their input is undervalued and, in turn, stop listening to them. Cultural differences in communication styles, such as direct versus indirect speech, can also create misunderstandings that hinder listening. Being mindful of these dynamics and adapting your approach to the specific social or cultural context can help bridge the gap. Overcoming the barriers. While it's disheartening when others don't listen, understanding the reasons behind their reluctance offers a path forward. Building trust and credibility, refining your communication style, and being attuned to your audience's emotional and psychological state are essential steps. Additionally, making your message relevant, concise, and engaging can help cut through the noise of information overload. Finally, fostering genuine connections and respecting social or cultural nuances can create an environment where your voice is valued. In conclusion, the reasons why people don't listen are complex, ranging from trust issues and poor communication to emotional barriers and societal dynamics. By addressing these factors thoughtfully, you can cultivate a communication style that invites others to listen. Being heard is not just about speaking louder. It's about speaking wiser, with empathy, clarity, and purpose. In doing so, you create opportunities for meaningful dialogue and connection, ensuring that your voice resonates in a world full of noise. Being ignored is one of the most frustrating experiences in human interaction. Whether it happens in conversations with friends, colleagues at work, or in public discourse, many people find themselves asking, "Why don't they want to listen to me?" The reasons are rarely simple. They often reflect a mix of psychology, communication style, and context. Understanding these reasons not only reduces the sting of being dismissed, but also helps us find more effective ways to connect. The problem of delivery. Sometimes people fail to listen because of how a message is delivered rather than what it contains. If a speaker uses a harsh tone, lectures instead of converses, or overwhelms others with too much information, listeners may tune out defensively. A good message can get lost if it isn't packaged in a way that makes others feel included, respected, or engaged. Competing priorities. In modern life, attention is fragmented. Phones buzz, deadlines loom, and countless distractions compete for mental space. Even if someone values what you have to say, they may not have the energy or focus at that moment. It is less about your worth as a speaker and more about their limited capacity to pay attention. Emotional barriers. People often resist listening when a message threatens their sense of self, beliefs, or emotions. For example, if your words highlight mistakes, suggest change, or challenge long-held views, listeners may block you out, not because you are wrong, but because listening feels uncomfortable. Silence or rejection can be a defense mechanism against vulnerability. Lack of trust or credibility. If listeners don't trust the speaker's experience, authority, or intentions, they are less likely to absorb the message. Trust is built over time, and it requires consistency. When people perceive a speaker as self-serving or unreliable, they instinctively protect themselves by disengaging. The universal need to be heard. Ironically, people may not listen because they themselves are craving to be listened to. In conversations, many individuals are preparing their next point rather than fully engaging with yours. The need to assert, defend, or share one's own perspective often drowns out genuine listening. The reasons people don't want to listen are rarely personal attacks, though they may feel that way. They stem from the way messages are delivered, the pressures of daily life, emotional defenses, trust gaps, and the universal struggle for attention. If we want to be heard, we must first strive to listen, adapt, and create space for mutual respect. In the end, effective communication is less about demanding attention and more about earning it. Below is a more formal/academic style essay on why people don't listen. If you like, I can also add more citations from peer-reviewed journals or adjust for a particular audience. Why people don't listen, an analysis of barriers to effective communication. Introduction. Listening is often lauded as a fundamental component of interpersonal communication, decision-making, leadership, and conflict resolution. Despite this, many people frequently fail to truly hear or engage with what others are saying. Understanding the obstacles to listening is crucial. It enables individuals to diagnose why communication fails and to adopt strategies that foster mutual understanding. This essay explores the major psychological, environmental, and communicative barriers that obstruct listening, using established theories and empirical findings to illuminate why people sometimes refuse or are unable to listen. Psychological barriers, internal distractions, and cognitive load. One of the primary reasons individuals do not pay attention is that their minds are preoccupied with other thoughts, worries, planning, rehearsing responses, or multitasking mentally. Working memory capacity is limited, and when it is taxed by internal distractions, fewer cognitive resources remain for processing what the speaker is saying. Additionally, stress, anxiety, or strong emotions can reduce attentional control, further diminishing the ability to listen actively. In such cases, the listener's own emotional state competes with the speaker's message for cognitive priority. Preconceived beliefs, bias, and emotional reactivity. Listeners often bring into conversations various biases. Confirmation bias, favoring information that aligns with their own beliefs, stereotypes, or judgments about the speaker based on identity or prior assumptions. These predispositions can lead to selective listening or shutting down entirely when the speaker's message challenges them. Emotional reactivity, such as defensiveness, shame, guilt, or anger, can also inhibit listening. If the message threatens self-image or deeply held beliefs, listeners may respond not by hearing, but by protecting themselves, resulting in resistance or outright avoidance. Communicative and speaker-related barriers. Clarity, delivery, and engagement. Even when a listener is willing and able, deficiencies in how a message is conveyed may impede listening. Unclear speech, jargon, overly technical language, or missing context can create confusion and frustration, prompting listeners to disengage. Likewise, dry delivery, monotone speech, lack of variation in tone or pace, minimal nonverbal cues can reduce engagement. A speaker who fails to adapt to the audience or who neglects to use gestures, eye contact, or expressive emphasis is more likely to lose the listener's attention. Lack of training or valuing of listening skills. Many people never receive explicit instruction on listening. While speaking, writing, debating are commonly taught and assessed, listening is often assumed rather than cultivated. This leads to listening being undervalued, even by those who believe themselves to be good communicators. Because listening is less visible or celebrated, its neglect often goes unnoticed until consequences emerge: misunderstandings, relational strain, or missed opportunities. Environmental and contextual barriers. External distractions and technological interruptions. Physical environment plays an important role. Background noise, interruptions from other activities, visual distractions, or digital notifications can easily break attention. In today's world, smartphones and other devices provide constant sources of interruption. These external stimuli compete with the speaker's voice for attention. Moreover, digital communication contexts, text, messaging, video calls, introduce additional delays, glitches, or multitasking potential, which exacerbate attention fragmentation. Though less face-to-face, these settings still require focus, and deficits are magnified when distractions are present. Relevance, motivation, and interest. Listeners are more likely to pay attention when the topic is relevant to their interests, values, or needs. Where the subject feels irrelevant or unimportant, motivation to engage drops. Engagement is often tied to perceived benefit. If what is being said does not seem to address the listener's concerns, they may tune out. Also, when listeners feel no emotional or intellectual connection to the speaker, or do not perceive the speaker as credible, their willingness to listen decreases. Credibility includes both expertise and perceived sincerity or trust. If these are lacking, even a clearly delivered message may be ignored. Implications and strategies. The barriers listed are not fatal or irreversible. Several strategies have been shown to improve listening. Active listening techniques, rephrasing, asking clarifying questions, summarizing what the speaker said, signaling empathy. Minimizing distractions, turning off or silencing devices, selecting quiet environments, reducing multitasking. Enhancing message clarity, using simpler language, structuring messages with clear context, using nonverbal cues. building credibility and trust, openness, consistency, humility in admitting uncertainty when appropriate, training and awareness, formal instruction or reflection on listening skills, perhaps as part of education or professional development. Listening is not passive. It is a complex, dynamic process influenced by psychological, communicative, and environmental factors. People often do not listen not from malice, but because of competing internal and external demands, emotional barriers, or deficiencies in how messages are delivered. Appreciating these barriers and addressing them can improve communication, reduce misunderstanding, and deepen human connection. Why people don't listen: an empirical analysis of barriers to effective communication. Introduction. Listening is a vital component of interpersonal communication, leadership, education, and conflict resolution. However, many conversations fail because listeners do not engage, respond, or absorb what is being said. To address this problem, it is important to examine empirical data regarding what prevents people from listening effectively. This essay integrates findings from psychological, communicative, and environmental research to show how often and why listening fails. Psychological barriers, internal distractions, cognitive load, and multitasking. A significant barrier to listening is internal distraction, thoughts about other tasks, personal concerns, or planning future responses. Research into multitasking supports this. A study by the University of Utah found that people who frequently multitask are generally worse at it. One striking finding was that 70% of participants believed themselves above average at multitasking, though in reality they showed poorer performance. Another survey, the Panorama Project, found that 67% of audiobook users multitask, doing chores, commuting, etc., while listening, compared to 54% of ebook users who multitask while reading. These data show that a large proportion of people attempt to divide their attention, which typically reduces comprehension and retention. Emotional reactivity, anxiety, and stress. Emotional states such as anxiety, fear, or defensiveness can interfere with listening. Though direct quantitative results on this in general listening contexts are less numerous, there are relevant findings in educational settings. For example, a study among English as a foreign language, EFL, learners found that interventions that supported emotion regulation, hope, gratitude, resilience, significantly improved listening comprehension, implying that negative emotions had been hindering comprehension before the intervention. Another study in Pakistan among Bachelor of English students reported that negative emotions, anxiety, fear, frustration, were associated with poorer listening comprehension. Positive emotions, like confidence, engagement, were linked with better outcomes. Communicative and speaker-related barriers. Delivery, pace, and unfamiliar language. Listeners are often unable to follow because the speech is too fast, the accent unfamiliar, or vocabulary/idioms unknown. Quantitative studies in language learning contexts provide data. In a study of English education students in Indonesia, 60% reported that encountering unfamiliar words, including jargon and idioms, was the most frustrating barrier in a listening component of their English proficiency test. Only 3.3% said it was not a barrier. In another study with junior high students, SMP 12 Padang, Indonesia, external factors such as speaker accent, recording quality, and speed were identified among the leading external barriers to listening comprehension. Internal barriers included inability to concentrate and anxiety. Though percentages for each barrier were not all given, the pattern was clearly measurable. Lack of listener training and awareness. Many people are not trained in active listening or do not value listening as a skill. One relevant study in Italy, Friuli Venezia Giulia and Umbria regions, surveying students and teachers found that 8 to 9% of students reported hearing difficulties, diagnosed or perceived, in class. Among teachers, higher percentages, 27.1% in high schools, 12% at university, reported hearing difficulties in students. Additionally, 45.8% of high school students blamed classroom noise for listening difficulties. These data suggest that besides emotional or cognitive barriers, physical and training gaps contribute systematically. MDPI 7. Environmental and contextual barriers. External noise, classroom conditions, and physical barriers. Physical conditions matter. The Italian survey noted that noise in the classroom was cited by 45.8% of high school students as a major reason they experienced poor listening conditions. College/university students more often cited issues such as their seat in the classroom, 40.9%, as interfering with listening. Relevance, motivation, and interest. When listeners believe a message is irrelevant or delivered by someone they don't trust, motivation drops. While precise numbers vary by study, data from language learning suggests that students who experience motivation, emotional support, and belief in the value of the task perform significantly better in listening comprehension after interventions. For example, in the positive psychology intervention study among EFL learners, N equals 45, the experimental group significantly outperformed the control group in listening tests after the intervention that encouraged hope, gratitude, and empathy. Implications and strategies. Empirical findings suggest several paths forward. Reduce multitasking. Given how common and detrimental multitasking is, e.g. 67% of audiobook listeners do it, designing environments or conversations that minimize distractions can help. Address emotional barriers. Interventions that promote positive emotion, reduce anxiety or defensiveness, and support emotion regulation can measurably improve listening performance. Improve clarity, pace, and familiar language. Use vocabulary that the audience knows. Avoid overly rapid speech. Explain idioms or jargon. Language learning studies show that unfamiliar words and accent are among the top barriers for many learners. Optimize physical environment. Reduce background noise. Ensure good acoustics. Seat people where they can see and hear the speaker well, as shown by surveys where classroom noise and seat location were major difficulties. Training in listening skills. Explicit instruction in listening and raising awareness of common barriers appears promising. In educational research, structured interventions, e.g. positive psychology, have shown measurable gains. Empirical research confirms that there are multiple, interacting reasons people fail to listen. Internal psychological factors like distraction or emotion, communicative issues like pace and unfamiliar language, and environmental conditions such as noise and poor acoustics. While the exact prevalence of each barrier depends on context, e.g. education versus business, the data collectively show that many people are prevented from listening well. Understanding these quantitative findings helps not only in diagnosing communication breakdowns, but in designing strategies to improve listening, making communication more effective, respectful, and mutually engaging.